We have a member of the audience that asked a question. She said that her husband of over 20 years picked up and left. Now, that was hurtful, but what hurts her more is that he's turned his back on his teenage sons. He doesn't care that he doesn't see them, he doesn't look to find what's happening with them. If they reach out to him, he sort of is not interested. She wonders, how can somebody turn his back on a marriage, turn his back on his children, and totally forget 20 years? And this was a marriage where she thought everything was going fine. How can those young men heal from this kind of abandonment? Because she's not the one being abandoned now. I mean, she's come to terms with his abandoning her, but she cannot understand how he can abandon his children.
Yes, as the woman, we're speaking about these things happening with women here as in this discussion. It happens to men too, of course. But the woman who's been left by her husband can at least hope that maybe at some point she'll have a new relationship, but the children have really one father. They might have father figures, which is very helpful and can really save the day, but they have one father. So they can't replace that biological person. So the stakes are different for the children who've been abandoned. If they've been abandoned, I mean, a lot of times, let's say the father leaves, and the father, now he's the one abandoning, but yet he's now lonely and worries about his children. And now he needs his children in a way he never did before. And he even connects with them and forms special new relationships. But sometimes the father just leaves, the whole thing behind. And the children have a very difficult time. And it creates shame. It seems so silly that the person feels ashamed, and it's very unconscious. But the child, it could be a 25-year-old man. It could be in almost any age group of the child of someone who abandoned the family, can say, why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I important enough? Why wasn't I special enough? Why didn't I form a better relationship with him? Why don't I count? Why am I so weak and puny and unimportant to my father? So even though those are unconscious thoughts, the abandonment of a father of his children creates shame. And so it is very, very important that everyone recognizes what the children are unconsciously, the terrible assumptions, the fact that they will have a reduction of self-esteem from this, and that there has to be a lot of support to let the children know it is not you, it's not because you're missing anything. You're not, it's not about you at all. But those are easier said than done words. But there still has to be a lot of support to understand the fact that this is a real wound, and it won't show on the outside. A lot of kids act like, all right, they don't let it show, but it's very much affecting them.
Thank you. So, what can the parents, who is the remaining parent, do to lessen this hurt and to help them not have long term effects of this abandonment?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that can be tried. It doesn't, you're among your listeners, you might have people there who don't don't have the luxury of doing these things, but if they have an open communication with their ex, they might not have the luxury of that, but if they can, their job would be as translator to be able to tell the ex what impact this could be having on their children, the self-esteem, the shame, the awful feeling of not being able to ever replace their father, the terrible loss that, and in a young person, it's so hard to find words for, so the child won't be able to say these things. The parent becomes the translator. So if you have the luxury of having access to your ex, sometimes they won't talk to you. I mean, you know, communication is cut off. There's nothing you can do. But if you have that, that's wonderful. And if you don't have that, of course, if there are professionals around to help out and provide support, that's always, a wonderful thing. But if you're doing, your own work with your kids, really it is to be in empathy, to really do sort of that active listening where you say, I can imagine it must feel awfully belittling to have your father leave like that. It had nothing to do with you, but I know it doesn't feel good that, that dad um, isn't in contact. It has to feel very dismissive, as if you're not important. And of course, you're important. It has nothing to do with that. For the parent to really anticipate what the child is feeling, put it into words for them, and not expect the child to say, "You're right, that's just how I'm feeling," because children will say, no, I don't feel that, whatever. Children have such a hard time identifying these feelings. But the parent, not all children, some children are beautiful in expressing their feelings, but very often, and the parent can play a very supportive, sensitive role in trying to soften the blow. For will go on for years, at least a year, if not two, of needing this support, if not longer.
So on average, typically you say between 1 and 3 years.
I would say it could go on, like if you talk to somebody who's maybe 50 and you look back on their history, and then they can say, well, I had a pretty good childhood. My father left when I was 14 and I lost touch with him. Did it have an impact on you? Well, not yeah, maybe. You know, it it could go on for years. That you don't know in what way did that 14-year-old organize his whole personality around coping with that. So the impact can be ongoing. But I would say that for a couple of years, the parents really need to be extra, supportive.
Extra supportive. Professional support would help.
I think so. I mean, it depends on the level of professionalism that you can find, because again, the young child will have a very hard time putting any of this into words, because children have a hard time identifying feelings. Um, they have a hard time putting a feeling word to a feeling. They just saying something like, I feel sad because dad left, that's difficult. So parents really have to find professionals who understand children's communication and understand the abandonment wound. So, but it's so helpful because children also feel listen. I'm sure everyone's familiar with these loyalty conflicts. Somebody leaves, and then the child feels, you have two kids, one feels supportive of you and the other one feels poor dad must be out there feeling so abandoned. They actually feel abandoned very often for the other person. So there is so much going on, the loyalty conflicts and so forth, that it really requires some expert, understanding of that, and or the parent has to be very tuned into all of these feelings.
That's very useful for people who are going through that kind of situation. The need for professional help, if you as a parent don't know how to talk to the child, is very important.
Yes.
I'm sure that's an important takeaway.